Briefly, my story is I was not allowed to be raised in South Africa. I was born in Cape Town, and my mom fell in love with a priest at the local church who happened in South African terms to be so-called colored, and they weren't allowed to get married, and the church sent us to Zimbabwe to be raised. And I grew up, I think the story that I want to tell here maybe is the fact that I grew up with my parents trying to explain why we couldn't live in South Africa and why we had to, live in Zimbabwe. And here I am, a 7-year-old kid. And, all my cousins had really nice toys because they could just go to the local toy shop and buy a toy. I learned to be creative because when we would come back from trips, I would go and try and create the toys that I saw and make them myself. But as my parents were explaining to me, why they were explaining apartheid, they were explaining why we couldn't be there. And the only thing that I really took away from it was that I hated white people because I couldn't have nice toys. So it took me a very long time to be able to talk to white people because I was raised basically like, no, they're the enemy. They're the reason that I can't live in the country with my family. So it created a different life path for me, I guess, in the sense of being raised outside of South Africa, but with a very, very loyal South African surrounding. And, being proudly South African, but hating South Africa. Because South Africa didn't allow me to live in the country where I was born in. And I think, I feel blessed to have been raised outside of South Africa during those days. I got to see what was happening from an outsider's perspective. And coming back to South Africa many, many, many years later, I tried to talk to white people. But I discovered that there was a very, very, very isolated mind state amongst the white people that I met from South Africa. And, I ran away very quickly and went overseas to New York and was like, I love South Africa, but people are kind of weird. So I went to New York and started my life over. And, in New York, I came from a hip hop background. So, going to New York, hip hop epicenter of the world, really got to experience things and ended up working in the fashion world and the photography world. And, learned that there are a lot of cool people and it didn't matter your race or your denomination or your sexuality. Like everybody was like, there were cool people amongst everybody. And, took that and came back to South Africa with that different mind state of not everybody is the enemy because they look a certain way. And that didn't really work because South African white people are just different. And tried to live in Cape Town, but I'll close with the story just to kind of summarize, but my stepdad, is one of the most amazing men I have ever met. And I always tell the story of my mom's sister was married to one of the most racist men I have ever met in my life. A typical Afrikaner that spoke every vernacular language because he didn't want anybody to speak about him and not know what they were speaking about, which taught me that the most racist white people are the ones that speak the most vernacular.